If you want a date on the calendar, if you need a date on the calendar, if you want to believe a date on the calendar, when everything's going to change, then February 19th is your day, believe it or not. I'm Mark Sponsler, and welcome to the Stormsurf Video Surf Forecast for the week starting Sunday, January 29th.
Stormsurf, waves, weather, buoys, altimetry, snow, temperatures, El Nino, weather analysis, essential data for outdoor people, all the time, no hype.
Be sure and like and subscribe. Ring the bell. You get automatic notifications when the videos are posted, typically on Sunday evenings. All right, let's get to work. We'll start by looking at significant wave heights for the North Pacific Ocean. We see remnants of a storm that was currently off the Kuril Islands, pushing up into the Bering Sea with 38-foot seas, but becoming shadowed by the Aleutian Islands, no longer offering support for swell development. Remnants of a little, not even a gale, weather system north of the Hawaiian Islands are generating 15-foot seas aimed off to the east and of no particular interest. Now that, a pretty quiet pattern, is in control. Looking at current conditions, we'll start up in Northern California, Half Moon Bay, buoy number 46012. We're looking at all the energy present hitting the buoy, anywhere from up to 30.3 seconds, super long period energy, which there is none. We see a little bump of energy there in like the 13, 14 second period range, and a whole bunch of wind swell mixed in. Put that all together, primary swell, wind swell, 4.8 feet at 9.1 seconds, generating 4.3 foot surf, so chest high, something like that. And secondary swell, the more energetic part of it, 3 feet at 13 seconds. That's good for 3.8 feet, 4 feet, chest high again from 278 degrees. Looking down south at the northern end of Southern California, buoy 46053, East Santa Barbara buoy. A little bump of energy again at about 13 seconds with some wind swell mixed in. Primary swell 1.6 feet at 13.8 seconds, so good for 2-foot surf. What is that? Maybe we'll say thigh high, something like that. With secondary wind swell 1.3 feet at 10.5 seconds, so knee high or something like that. At the south end of Southern California, buoy 191, Point Loma south. Again, even pretty much the same sort of deal. A little bump of energy somewhere in the 13 to 15 second period range and lingering wind swell mixed in there. Primary swell 2.2 feet at 12.7 seconds, so waist high, we'll say 2.8 feet. Secondary swell 1.5 feet at 15.8 seconds. Again, thigh to waist high, something like that. And then finally, somewhere where there's real surf, Waimea Bay buoy, number 106, north shore of Oahu. A new spike of energy at 16.7 seconds with a bunch of northwest wind bump there, or northeast wind bump mixed in. Primary swell 8.1 feet at 17.1 seconds from 312 degrees. 13.8 foot Hawaiian, we'll say triple overhead, that sort of thing. And then the wind swell 7.5 feet at 9.8 seconds from 342 degrees. 2 to 3 feet overhead. So where's that swell coming from that's hitting Hawaii? Well, a gale developed on Wednesday, the 25th of January, off of North Japan and then the southern Kuril Islands. Produced 28-foot seas there as we got later into Wednesday and early Thursday, and then up to about 34 or 35 feet, little tiny area, 36-foot seas. Thursday morning, and then it pushed off to the north on Friday and started to fade out. Beyond that, another gale developed, producing 43, I think it got up to, about 43-foot seas. That was Saturday evening, early this morning, Sunday the 29th of January. Most of the energy aimed off to the northeast, but maybe a tiny little bit of sideband energy will make it to the U.S. West Coast, but a long ways away, and really not a whole lot is expected from it. So that puts us on the hunt for something better. We're going to start by looking at jet stream level winds. These winds up about 30,000 feet help support the formation of gales. When those gales form, help direct their track. We're looking for a trough, a dip in the jet. We see it right there. What that helps do is create a counterclockwise circulation aloft and down at the ocean surface. That's the hallmark of low pressure. And of course, low pressure, if it's strong enough, generates winds. Winds, if they're strong enough, get traction on the ocean surface and generate seas. Seas, as they radiate away from the fetch area turn into swell, and swell when it hits your beach, like Hawaii there or California off here, creates surf. So we have a pretty good amount of winds in the upper level of the atmosphere, pushing about 180 knots off Japan, making it to the date line, 180 west right there, that's the date line, and then everything splits. Part of the energy just goes way north of even the Bering Sea, the other part falls south and then pushes over Hawaii. When you get this split sort of pattern in between, you get bulletproof high pressure, and that's pretty much what we got. All the swell production confined to the far west Pacific at the moment. So we get into Monday, more of the same sort of pattern, and Tuesday, still the same. As we get into Wednesday, though, there's a little bit of a change forecast. Notice the main part of the jet, the part that was split and running way up north, breaks off and is gone. We have one main flow, not particularly strong, but meandering across the North Pacific on roughly the 40 north latitude line, with a bit of a trough here in the Gulf of Alaska, and then the last of the split energy pushing into California. Maybe there's a little bit of hope there in that trough, and maybe another trough trying to develop back to the west. As we get into Thursday, notice a good amount of energy, 180 knots, but again, the split tries to develop. Let's see if it pushes way up to the north, though. Look at that, it really doesn't. We end up with sort of a weak trough over the Gulf of Alaska, maybe supporting gale development. The split, a lot of energy falls south of Hawaii and into Baja, but the rest of the energy traveling through the northern Pacific, that sort of suggests the demise of strong high pressure along California, maybe opening the door to at least a little bit of moisture and precipitation. So we get into Saturday, there's the split, plain as day, but the northern branch of the jet stays to the south. Little bit of a trough. You see it pushing over northern California as we get into Sunday, a week out. Most of the energy off to the west. Still the main split point somewhere around 170 west, a little bit east of the date line. We're really waiting for something to pump more energy into the jet stream to feed the storm track, but not for the next week. So let's go take a look at what's going on down at the surface with the jet stream in mind. There's our gale. We know we have a trough right here. Gale off Kamchatka, pushing up into the Bering Sea, and a little bit of fetch forecast develop as we get into Monday. Local wind swell, high pressure, trying to push into the Great Basin. You can see the circulation. Well, there it is, 1032 millibars. See the clockwise circulation around the high. You get a little bit of a tightening of the isobars right here, creating 30-knot north winds, maybe some wind swell for California. Other than that, not a whole lot. As we're just racing off looking for any sign of anything, we're into Wednesday. We know a trough starts developing in the Gulf of Alaska. We see a little patch of 30-knot winds. Nothing too impressive. If anything, maybe a front and a weather maker for, we'll say, Northern California, but then a secondary gale starts developing Thursday into Friday in the Gulf of Alaska with 30 to 35 knot winds. Yet another gale developing off the North Kuril Islands, Kamchatka, with 45 knot winds. This certainly should be some sort of a swell producer, mainly north of Point Conception, and probably more wind swell when it's 30 knots. Really, 35 knots is what you need for a good 13-second period swell. But there you go, maybe a little bit as we get into Friday. Still kind of a ways out in the models. 40-knot winds continue off of Kamchatka on Friday evening. So we get into Saturday. We're into next weekend. The low starts pushing into the Pacific Northwest. The other low pushing over the North Dateline region. We're into Sunday, a week out now. The low starts fading. Looks like an onshore flow for California. Bits and pieces of energy here and there, but no strong defined significant class swell producing weather system is forecast. What's the effect of those winds on the ocean surface? Well, let's take a look. We know there's the little wind swell fetch. What is that? That's just eyeballing at 14 or 15 foot seas, something like that. We know there's really not going to be anything in the Gulf. There's the first teaser system, but it really doesn't do anything. This system on Thursday is the more likely swell producer, 22 foot seas north of Hawaii, aimed a little bit at the islands, and also at the U.S. West Coast, 36 foot seas off the Kuril Islands. As we get into Friday night and Saturday, almost a little area, 26 foot seas and fading to 25 feet on Saturday morning. probably bypassing most of Hawaii, targeting the U.S. West Coast. So some hope there. 28-foot seas over the North Dateline region. And now we're into Sunday, the last of the low, with barely 20-foot seas off of southern Oregon and 18 to 20-foot seas over the North Dateline region. Really kind of too far away to do much. Maybe something behind that, but nothing too enticing. All right, what's the local wind forecast looking like? Well, we know we have fetch off of California, 30-knot north winds. That's good for wind swell production. And we have a trade situation for Hawaii, but there's northeast winds just west of the islands. It looks like they're starting to push off to the west. That's a good thing. So maybe by Monday, a better scenario for Hawaii. Still 30-knot east winds for the Big Island as we get into Monday morning. That's a bit on the brisk side. Low pressure just south of the islands generating this kind of disturbed weather pattern. Sort of a northeast flow Monday for California. So we get into Tuesday, a lighter flow, north winds, maybe northeast near shore in the mornings. Still a pretty brisk trade situation for the Hawaiian Islands. On Wednesday, a lighter wind flow for California. Light winds for the Hawaiian Islands. On Thursday, here comes a front. South winds from at least the Golden Gate northward. Pretty brisk. Light trades for the Hawaiian Islands. On Friday, things clear out. Weak high-pressure system tries to build into California. Light wind regime. Here's this low off the coast. Trades for the Hawaiian Islands. Looks like swell production for both Hawaii and California. So we get into Saturday. Trades, high-pressure build in for the Hawaiian Islands. Light wind regime at least early Saturday morning, but you can see another front approaching the coast with south winds, probably from the Golden Gate northward. Trades for the Hawaiian Islands. And then on Sunday, looks like the front blows through some sort of southwest wind flow for most of North and Central California. Trades for the Hawaiian Islands. Looking at the potential for snow, Olympic Valley, the snow forecast dashboard. This model earlier, it suggested 6 inches of snow today for Olympic Valley. Now it's down to about 2 inches, and that seems about right. We were kind of remotely gawking at what was going on. There's snow showers, certainly cold temperatures, but not a whole lot of precipitation. Chain controls are up for 80 for a little bit there. Another bout on February 2nd into the 3rd, maybe 9 inches, and another bout beyond that, getting us to about 18 inches theoretically 10 days. That'd be about a week out. Kirkwood doing a little bit better, maybe 3 or 4 inches from today's system. And then on the 3rd, getting another 6 inches, gets you up to about 10 inches, something like that. And then yet another bout out on February 5th, total accumulation about 24 inches. And then Mammoth, since all these systems are coming from the north, the northern Sierras will wring out most of the moisture, and not a whole lot for Mammoth. Total accumulation for the next 10 days, we'll say 4 inches or something like that. The freezing level for Olympic Valley, getting quite cold, almost down to the surface. Freezing temperatures expected in the Bay Area over the next day or two. But then as we get into the close of January, you can see the freeze level. The freezing level is right where this white and the gray intersect. Gray is sleet. Red is liquid precipitation. This is the base of Olympic Valley at 6,200 feet. This is the summit at 9,000 feet. So you see the freezing level up to almost the top, 8,700 feet, something like that. Maybe dropping a little bit on February 3rd and then coming back up. And then a colder pattern, more typical winter pattern setting up beyond that. All right, let's go take a look long term. What's going on with the Madden Julian Oscillation and the El Nino Southern Oscillation? The two major weather oscillations that are the largest determiners of weather for the Pacific Ocean. We'll start by examining the MJO, the Madden Julian Oscillation, a periodic weather oscillation that rotates around the planet. There's two phases, active and the inactive. The active phase is on one side of the planet, the inactive phase on the other. They rotate west to east over the equator. It is the active phase that is the one we're most interested in. It is effectively a low pressure system. And because it's low pressure, well, what it does is when it moves over the far west Pacific, it imparts energy to the jet stream. It sucks up latent heat energy off the ocean in the far west Pacific, lofts it way up into the atmosphere. That feeds energy in the jet stream. A more energetic jet stream then doesn't split. It helps feed storm production and also can bring weather and moisture into California. Also, if the active phase is strong enough, it can dampen, if not reverse, trade winds on the equator in the West Pacific. And when that happens, it can then take warm water that's typically present, pushed by trades in the far West Pacific, start pushing it east, not on the surface, but under the ocean surface. It travels the thermocline the whole way across the Pacific under the equator, and eventually, 3 months later, will spring to the surface, erupt to the surface off of Ecuador, creating a warm water pool there. If you have successive active phases of the MJO that create successive Kelvin waves, that can help usher in El Nino. That's exactly what we're looking for. So right now, we're looking for signs of the active phase of the MJO. And how do we look for that? Well, we have surface level winds here. This is data from the TAO buoy array, series of buoys strung across the equator. This is the West Pacific here, the East Pacific here, equator right there, dateline right there, New Guinea right there. We're just looking at the arrows, and they give us wind direction and speed. The longer the arrows, the stronger the winds. Pretty strong trades over the East Pacific, pretty strong trades over the Central Pacific, pretty strong over in the West Pacific, what we call the Kelvin wave generation area, because when the active phase moves in this area from just 5 degrees north and south of the equator, if that's New Guinea there, and this is the far West Pacific, just in this box to about 170 west. Notice the oranges and the reds, that's warm water. If the trades reverse, if they're blowing the other direction, that warm water will get set in motion in the form of a Kelvin wave pushing to the east. But it's not actual wind speeds we're interested in. It's the anomalies, difference in normal for this time of year. And looking in the far East Pacific, well, the arrows are going mainly north, not really to the east, not really to the west, so pretty much normal winds. You come across the Central Pacific, those strong winds, same deal, pretty much normal. Only in the far West Pacific and the Kelvin wave generation area do we see the arrows starting to build out of the east, suggesting stronger than normal trades. That's the opposite of what we want. That suggests the inactive phase of the MJO, and the inactive phase is just the opposite of the active phase. It doesn't feed energy to the jet stream. Notice the split jet stream we saw in the previous series of images, and the jet not being particularly powerful, and the lack of storms in the North Pacific. So, active phase is what we want to see. We're not there quite yet. We're in the middle of the inactive phase, at least according to this chart. Let's dig deeper. Here's surface level winds for the past 5 days. The blues are easterly anomalies. You can see the little arrows going from east to west. The oranges and reds, westerly anomalies. But all we care about is 5 degrees north and south of the equator. Zero is the equator. There's South America, Central America, Hawaii, New Guinea there. So the area we're really interested in is right here. And that was on January 23rd. Looked like easterly anomalies. 24th, easterly anomalies even stronger. Same deal on the 25th, the 26th, and the 27th. All clearly indicative of the inactive phase of the MJO. But notice westerly anomalies, this is the Indian Ocean right here, maritime continent there. Westerly anomalies right on the equator, pushing over the maritime continent, suggesting the active phase of the MJO is just about knocking on the door of the West Pacific, but not there yet. So let's look forward 1 week. All right, this is the east-west component of the winds over the entire planet. The dateline runs right up the middle. The blues and the purples are easterly anomalies, inactive phase of the MJO. Reds and oranges, westerly anomalies, the active phase of the MJO. But the dateline is right there. The far West Pacific starts about 125 east, if you're really generous. This box right here, that's the Kelvin wave generation area. So what we see is easterly anomalies, the inactive phase of the MJO, in control, and if anything, getting stronger for the next 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 days, something like that, peaking, filled with easterly anomalies filling the entire Kelvin wave generation area. And here are those westerly anomalies we saw over the maritime continent, right, trying to push. You You can see even back here, this was that big atmospheric river event we had back in December and January, westerly anomalies deep into the Kelvin wave generation area. Now we're in the exact opposite. They're all balled up, knocking on the door. They got to push these easterly anomalies out of the way. That's not going to happen for a little bit. So let's go out 2 weeks. We're looking at a statistic model. These are not winds. These are the areas favorable for cloud cover or precipitation. It's really cloud cover, outgoing long wave radiation. What that means is if sunlight bounces off the ocean surface and then gets reflected up into the atmosphere, that means lack of clouds in the air. Okay, the reds, positive anomalies, meaning cloud-free coverage. That would be the inactive phase of the MJO, bulletproof high pressure. So let's get ourselves oriented. South America, Central America, Hawaii, New Guinea there, equator right there, dateline right there, Kelvin wave generation area right there. This suggests inactive phase of the MJO over the Kelvin wave generation area. The blue, negative anomalies, that means lots of cloud cover, active phase of the MJO here. We go out 5 days, pretty much the same thing. Go out 10 days, notice the active phase trying to make it into the West Pacific, and according to this model, 2 weeks out, making it into the West Pacific with the inactive phase getting shunted off or shoved off to the east. Now we look at the dynamic model, the GEFS model. It's not nearly as favorable. It has the inactive phase locked in over the dateline for the next 2 weeks with the active phase stuck in the West Pacific. Which one do we go by? Typically, it's somewhere between the two. This one isn't always right. This one isn't always right. Go 50-50. Probably 2 weeks from now, a little bit of the active phase trying to make it into the West Pacific. Let's drill in a little deeper here. Phase diagrams for the same two models. Statistic model, dynamic model here. What are we looking at? Well, we know the active phase moves from west to east, from the Indian Ocean to the Maritime Continent, to the West Pacific, to the East Pacific, under the United States, across the Atlantic, over Africa, back to the Indian Ocean. The heavy dot is where the active phase is right now, and the further that dot is away from this circle, the stronger it is. So a moderately strong active phase of the MJO in the Indian Ocean. The three models, each one of these dots represents a day. So 3 different runs suggest the active phase moving to the Maritime Continent, almost in the West Pacific, and somewhere between non-existent to moderately strong 2 weeks from now. The dynamic model not being as aggressive, the active phase barely making it out or over the Maritime Continent and pretty weak. The upper level model, and this is a statistic model, suggesting areas favorable for precipitation. The greens, favorable for precipitation. The reds, dry air. All right. This goes out 40 days, 5 days each panel. South America, Central America, Hawaii's that little dot there. New Guinea, the equator right there. Dateline roughly there, Kelvin wave generation area right here. Now, this is upper level, so it runs a bit ahead of what happens down at the surface. The upper level comes first, and then about a week later, the surface sort of drags along behind. This is already showing the active phase trying to make headroad into the Pacific, getting stronger and getting real about the 6th of February, but you add about a week on that. That'd be about the 13th of February, and then making its way across the Pacific and into Ecuador on, I'm looking around the microphone here, the 5th of March, so into mid-March, something like that. Inactive phase, pretty strong, following across. In fact, actually, this model 2 weeks ago was like, didn't even show any trend at all, just dead neutral. Now it's showing a strong, this is relatively strong active phase, followed by a relatively strong inactive phase. So interesting. The MJO, we think, is actually getting stronger with each push across the Pacific. That's a good thing. That might suggest that we're coming out of La Nina and the MJO is finally waking up. During La Nina, the active phase of the MJO basically goes to sleep. And we get in this sort of a perpetual inactive phase over the North Pacific. During El Nino, the exact opposite happens. The MJO disappears, but it's just steady state active phase all the time. So the fact that we're starting to swing, or at least it looks like the MJO is getting stronger and pulsing more, suggests the demise of La Nina and perhaps a transition towards El Nino, or at least something more resembling normal. And when you get these transitory states where, you're swinging from La Nina towards something maybe better, good things happen. The atmosphere starts getting momentum, and storm production seems more prevalent, and the storms that do form are stronger. So this is a step in the right direction. Right, the CFS model, going out 1 month. Same deal, whole planet on one chart, the date line runs right up the middle there. The blues, easterly anomalies, the reds, westerly anomalies. Now, the solid contour here, active phase of the MJO. This was that big push in December and early January that gave us all the precip in California and the monster storms and all that sort of thing. Westerly anomalies pushing to about 150 east, something like that. Okay, we're in the inactive phase, this dotted contour right now. Here is today's date. Inactive phase pushing across the Pacific, getting quite strong. That's 1 week from now. So 2 weeks from now, strong easterly anomalies in control. Then it shuts down. And what's behind it? Well, certainly looking to be a very strong active phase of the MJO, at least as strong as the one in December, making its way across the Pacific again to about 150 east. Again, this is 2, 3, 4 weeks out on the model. Do you believe a model out that far? Do you believe the date, February 19th? That would be right around in here. That's what I was referring to earlier. If you're a believer, or if you just want to believe, like maybe I do, then that could be a watershed moment. Maybe not so good if you're in California, live in a canyon, but from a surf production standpoint, yes. From a snow production standpoint, yes. And from a transition standpoint away from La Nina, even yes, more. So let's dig a little deeper, and why February 19th and what makes it so special theoretically. Well, all right, so we're looking at the east-west component of the wind, but the forecast is up top. What's happened in the past is down the bottom. Date line right here, Kelvin wave generation area, this rough area, blue, 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 easterly anomalies. There was our little Christmas push there, westerly anomalies. Okay, here is what appears to be the inactive phase of the MJO with that big pulse of easterly anomalies forecast about February 14th. But notice as you get about to the 18th, westerly anomalies building in strong across the West Pacific. And notice this, what happens after that? The easterly anomalies completely disappear as we get into March, and westerly anomalies take over the entirety of the Pacific. Now you'll say, well, like 2 months ago, wasn't this supposed to happen in like late January or early February? And yeah, the model said that. And it's still, we're off by a week or something like that, but still, February 18th is looking like that date that if there's going to be some big transition, we'll give it, a week of slack or something like that. And it's only 1, 2, 2.5 weeks away. If we can get to February 18th, and there's even any hint of solid westerly anomalies across the West Pacific, and if the model continues to show most easterly anomalies dissipating, then I would say we are in for a significant change across the Pacific. Let's overlay the MJO. All right, so where are we? Here we are today. Dotted contour, inactive phase of the MJO. Here's the strong pulse of the inactive phase. But you can see the active phase of the MJO is already supposed to be starting making inroads into the West Pacific on February 4th, something like that. That's, a week away? Not even that. And by the 18th, strong westerly anomalies are supposed to be in the West Pacific. Can you say Kelvin wave number 3? We think there's another one already coming across the Pacific from this event here, and there was one from this. It's starting to dissipate. So Kelvin wave number 1, number 2, potentially number 3. We talk about when you get a series of active phases of the MJO and you get Kelvin waves from each of them, that's a sign of potentially building El Nino. That's exactly why we're interested in February 19th. All right, so you see the drill here. It's pretty strong 1, 2, 3, 4 contour active phase of the MJO. I'm sure that's way overhyped because the last one was 2 and the one before that was 2. But even if it gets to be 3, that's a significant big deal. And it basically wipes out all the rest of the easterly anomalies. And beyond that, even with an inactive phase of the MJO forecast in, we'll say, later March and April, westerly anomalies persist. Let's overlay the low-pass filter. What's really going on here? All right, the dotted contour here, the high-pressure bias, the La Nina signal, and it's still in control. But as we get into the latter part of February, as this active phase pushes across the Pacific, it's going to punch a hole, theoretically, in this high-pressure bias, shunt it off to the east. The second contour disappears. The primary contour starts working its way off to the east. The low-pressure bias, which has been holed up over the maritime continent for 3 years now, is finally theoretically going to make a push off to the east, and by the end of the model run, the leading edge of it will be the whole way to the dateline. The entire Kelvin wave generation area will be encased in low pressure, if you believe a model going 3 months out. Let's just get us to February 19th first. All right, what's going on down in the ocean? This is data from the TAO buoy array again. This is the East Pacific here, the West Pacific here, but we're going down into the ocean. This is depth, down 100 meters, 200 meters, 300 meters. These are the anchor lines on the buoys. The X's are sensors on those anchors. The sensors collect temperature data down in the ocean. We're looking for Kelvin waves. Remember, Kelvin waves don't move on the surface. They move down in the ocean. Okay, they follow the thermocline. That is the thermocline right there, that 24 degree isotherm right there. So the 28 degree isotherm, 28 degrees centigrade, that's warm water, stuck at about 175 east, where it was last week. The 26 degree isotherm, about 152 west, exactly where it was last week. The 24 degree isotherm, thickening up here, getting a little bit deeper, because we know a Kelvin wave, a previous Kelvin wave pushed across here. So the pump is a little bit primed, but nothing too spectacular. But it's not the actual temperatures. It is the anomalies, differences from normal. Clearly, a big pool of warmer than normal water, 4 degrees centigrade above normal. The leading edge of that pool, according to this model, let's see, that's the 140 degree line. Hawaii is around 158 over here, so 140, and even pushing east of that. Last week it was 142. You get the sense that warm water is on the move, pushing to the east. The remnants of a previous Kelvin wave right here. This pool of cool water here was -3 degrees last week, if I recall. It's starting to move to the east and fade, suggesting, so you typically get warm phase, or the Kelvin wave pushes across, and you get a little bit of a cool downwelling phase right after that. But here comes, theoretically, the next Kelvin wave. Another model using some of that data, but using other data, suggests, well, the pool of warm water even warmer than what we saw previously. This runs about a week behind, has the leading edge about 140 west, remnants of the previous Kelvin wave there, the upwelling phase of that previous Kelvin wave right there. But I've been watching this day by day, and it's creeping to the east and making its way up. The concern was this might somehow get lodged and like explode again, like what we've seen, and we'll take a look at that in a minute here in another image. But that doesn't seem to be the case. If anything, looks like perhaps another Kelvin wave is in development. Sea level anomalies, this is not temperature data, this is the height of the ocean. Use satellite, strip out all the waves, the wind waves, the tides, and is the sphere of the ocean. We know exactly with satellite data down to like a centimeter of what the height of the sphere of the ocean would be. If you have cold water at depth, it contracts, and that would create a divot on the ocean surface. If you have warm water depth, it expands and create a bump on the ocean surface. So we know there's lots of this is the West Pacific here, East Pacific here. Let's see. Chile, Peru, Ecuador, Central America, Hawaii right there, dateline right there, equator there, New Guinea there. Look at all the positive anomalies, 15, 20, 25. Warmer than normal water indicated not only west of the dateline, but also notice pushing across the dateline with some little pockets. This is some of the warm water from the previous Kelvin wave still there, a little channel open, and the warm water starting to bulge off to the west, suggesting the next Kelvin wave developing. And yet one more image, upper ocean heat anomalies. East Pacific here, West Pacific here. The reds and oranges, warmer than normal temperatures. This goes back a year. Notice how temperatures are just building and building and building in the West Pacific. And the cool temperatures, the La Nina signature. Now notice we even got a Kelvin wave that pushed across last February, a year ago. There was the upwelling phase, but it lingered. Another weak, very weak Kelvin wave didn't even make it across the Pacific. Then a massive cold response in that this past summer. And then here is our last incredibly weak one. Someone wrote in, made a comment, and said, you know, what's going on? These Kelvin waves are so weak, it's ridiculous. Agreed completely. But any Kelvin wave is better than just steady, bulletproof cold water. But we think that pattern is changing. There's Kelvin wave number 1. And look at this, warm water. You draw the line right here. Look at this, the reds and the oranges pushing off to 150 as of right now. There's the upwelling phase of the Kelvin wave cycle from this Kelvin wave, and that is pushing off to the east. And it looks like a bulldozer is starting to develop behind that. And we think yet on February 19th, yet another active phase of the MJO would be in flight, creating potentially a third Kelvin wave. Sure looks good. Sea surface temperatures. More good news here. All right, so what are we looking at? The oranges are warmer than normal temperatures. Is sea surface temperature anomalies, differences from normal for this time of year. The blues, colder than normal temperatures. South America, Ecuador there. Central America, Hawaii there. The equator right there. Blues, yes, the remnants of La Nina still in control. But notice, warmer than normal temperatures. Not just trending warm, but actually warmer than normal temperatures all along Chile, Peru, Ecuador. The previous Kelvin wave, its remnants getting caught by trades, dragged to the east. The last of La Nina. Now notice, we're going to show you a little thing here in a second, but these temperatures, even from last week, are getting warmer than they were last week. The real cold water that was from 140 on out, all but dissipated. I mean, in a week or a 2-week period, significant warming going on of this cool pool. That's a good sign. The past 7-day temperature trend, sea surface temperature trend. The oranges are warming temperatures. This is no big surprise. This just off of Peru, Chile, and Ecuador. Well, we'll just do Peru and Chile. Steadily warming now for weeks on end. This area here warming, and not just isolated to the Galapagos and Ecuador, the whole way across the Pacific to almost the date line now. We suspect the inactive phase of the MJO that's coming is going to start blowing trades, and some of this warmth is going to get wiped out. But we suspect that won't last too long. And then the backed off view, again, yes, the cool pool is there, but steadily weakening. Let's take a quick look at something. All right, so we're going back to just Christmas. What is that? 4 weeks ago. Okay, 4 weeks ago. Doesn't even seem like it's been that long. Notice the depth of the cool temperatures here from 140 and points west of there. And still good pockets of cooling even to the Galapagos. We'll go ahead to the 10th of January, to the 25th of January, to the 28th of January. And look, just in the past 3 days, this to this. Okay, so we'll do the whole run again. Here we go, one more time. Now I'll go back. We'll go one more time. We'll go back. You can see significant changes in the cool pool, getting weaker and weaker, with warm water building all around it, just putting the squeeze on it. That's exactly what we want to see. The sea surface temperature trend in the Nino 1.2 region is the area right there along Ecuador and the Galapagos, steadily upwards. Today's value in the positive range, 124 thousandths of a degree above normal. The La Nina cutoff is half a degree below normal in the official El Nino monitoring region. This is not that, but the trend is going in the right direction here. Now in the Nino 3.4 region, this is the area on the equator, 5 degrees north and south of the equator from south of California out to about the date line. Temperatures still cold, 893 thousandths of a degree below normal. We got to get up here to even be out of the El Nino range. The forecast has temperatures heading up theoretically from here. I want to see it happen. This has certainly been a lagging, slow-moving indicator. We need it to start heading up. All right, what's going on in the atmosphere? We're looking at pressure between Darwin and Tahiti, the Southern Oscillation Index. Darwin in the Indian Ocean, Tahiti in the Pacific Ocean. When pressure in Tahiti is falling or lower than Darwin, the index goes negative. When pressure is higher over Tahiti than Darwin, that would be like La Nina. But in the other, if it was lower in Tahiti, higher over Darwin, that'd be like an El Nino type situation, or the active phase of the MJO. Then this guy would go positive. Today's value still positive, 16.26. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. We think most of the action is west of Tahiti, where pressure is dropping, and we're in the very early stages. I mean, I'm talking here like major changes are happening, but the reality is there's still, 9 months away from being wholesale major changes that everyone would notice. We're on the bleeding edge here trying to read the tea leaves way ahead of everybody else. So this index still suggesting, at least from a daily contribution, a trend positive, or at least holding positive, though there's been some holes in the numbers here where things have dropped below. Before, it used to be just steady 20 or higher. Now we see little bits of weakness in there. The 30-day average suggests that. The value 12.21. Where were we a month ago? 18, 21, 20 or so. So things dropping a little bit. Of course, we did have an active phase of the MJO a couple of weeks, 3 or a month ago. So that would not be surprising to see this going down. The 90-day average, same deal, 11.68. What was it? It was 14.25, something like that. So perhaps a slowly dropping pressure regime in the Pacific. Let's go look at a graph of this. Here we go, the 30-day moving SOI graphed out. You can see the downward trend right here. The downward spikes are the active phase of the MJO. The upward spikes are the inactive phase of the MJO. If you have more inactive phases than active phases, then your numbers go up, just like they have been steadily. And now we're hoping, with the theoretical demise of La Nina, the active phases will start getting, we talked about more stronger active phases of the MJO, that will help drive this index down. We got to be down to 0 just to be neutral, not even El Nino, and down at like minus 15. There isn't even a minus 15 on the chart anymore because we've been so positive for so long. But we think we're starting to move in the right direction. We want to see a couple more weeks of this. And just to drive the point home, this shows the strength of the active phase of the MJO over time. We're back in 2021 here. You see there are occasional pulses, but most, you can see from July onward, we have, everything's been, what is that, 2, maybe 2.5 sigma, not even that, at 2. And maybe starting to go up here, the most recent one. But let's go back to 2018, before La Nina, lots of activity approaching 3 on the chart, and even back in 2017, even at the beginning of 2020, and then we fell into La Nina. Yeah, we did get a pulse here, but the trend has just been very weak, active MJOs of late. We think that trend is going to start building as we get deeper into the coming year. So what's the forecast? Well, it shouldn't be any surprise. Not really any change from what we've been seeing. This is the forecast for temperatures in the Nino 3.4 region, the official El Nino monitoring region. This is mid-January. We're out here somewhere. We're inches away from, theoretically, that's why I said that last chart. I mean, these are actuals here showing sea surface temperatures at about 0.6 of a degree below normal, where that other chart we were looking at was still at like 0.9 of a degree below normal. And the forecast has temperatures, we're out of the La Nina regime come, somewhere in the next 2 to 3 weeks, that sort of thing. And then reaching dead neutral by April, and then working our way up to barely El Nino territory as we get into October. So this latest run of the model it had temperatures up at about 0.8, something like that, and then the latest run knocked it down. So we'll see, but a little bit at a time every day, it starts creeping up again, suggesting that whatever the model found kind of scared it for a minute, but all the other models are indicating at least this same sort of trend, if not more. A progression way away from La Nina, at least into neutral territory, and perhaps better. So February 19 is coming. That's the date we got our eyes set on. We think significant changes will be happening at that time. Maybe not so good if you live in a canyon in California like we talked about. If you're in a mudslide prone area, take whatever precautions you need now to protect your property, fortify the land around your house, whatever it is, do it now, because we think 3 weeks from now, we could be in a much different situation than we are currently. Right now, we're pretty much high and dry. The Jetstream split, storm track pretty weak. 3 weeks from now, well, let's go and talk about the Pacific. We think the Jetstream will wake up as the active phase of the MJO starts tapping warm ocean temperatures and feeding energy into the Jetstream. The storm track will build up significantly. We'll have a series of storms and larger surf starting to push across the Pacific. The Jet will also start slamming into somewhere along the coast, be it Oregon or down into California. That's a big unknown at the moment. But the odds of atmospheric river activity in California should notch up when that happens, starting around the 19th and probably for the next 4 weeks after that. More precipitation into California, more snow in higher elevations, and probably a little bit warmer temperature regime as well. Notice that, remember, the snow levels were pretty high when those previous atmospheric rivers were hitting, because the Jet is dragging all the moisture over the warm Pacific Ocean. Right now, we're in a backdoor pattern. The Jetstream still is forecast a week from now to be more to the north and dipping down the coast, dragging cold air with it. We think a moderating effect will start taking effect as we get into the latter part of February. So for right now, kind of a slack pattern. Go take care of business, do whatever you need to do. But we think things are going to start waking up. Give it a couple of weeks. So use the time wisely and prepare. And of course, take all this with a grain of salt. We're just looking at the models. We're doing the best we can with a little bit of technology and a little bit of experience to try to extrapolate what's going to happen in the near term and the long term future. But certainly by next fall, a much more return to a normal pattern is expected, with, the standard on a 1 to 10 scale, at least a 5 or better, versus this year, which is, I think we projected a 3 or a 2.5. I think it's going to turn out to be more like a 1, something like that. At least I got the 80 off. All right, so that's it for this week. If you enjoyed the video, give us a thumbs up. If you have any questions, write them up in the comments section. We'll be happy to answer. And if anything else, we'll see you next week. Same time, same channel. Thanks for watching.